Good morning and happy Monday, Gamecock fans. Monday, January 20th. I almost said July. With the winter weather sweeping the country, including you fine folks in the South or that are located in the South. I consider myself still a fine folk from the South, but July would be nice right about now. It's -10, the wind chill where I'm at today, and I know that the deep south was going to get a bunch of snow according to the forecast. So hope you're staying safe. Lots going on today. It's Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. It's inauguration day in Washington. It's a different day or a new day for Inside the Gamecocks, Chief Sports, and all that good stuff because we're bringing you 4 hours of content, splitting into two shows within a 4 hour block, both called Inside the Gamecocks. The morning show will kick off at 10. Shane Beamer, Gamecocks head football coach, will be on with JB at 10:05 Eastern. He's also got Mike Morgan, John Whittle in with him today. And then the last 2 hours, second 2 hours, Inside the Gamecocks, the show version 3.0 of the show, version 4.0 of Inside the Gamecocks with Phil Mullinax and myself, kind of going back to version 1.0 of the show, if you will, or 2.0 of the show, if you will. This is more like 1.0. If you guys remember the original Inside the Gamecocks podcast, I'll just be honest, I didn't know what I was doing. I probably needed some help with it. It was just me talking. Some of you actually like that, and that's why you listen to coffee, so that's good. I'm actually much more, I guess, crisp with this type of stuff than maybe I once was, and that's because of this. Most of my radio experience was as a guest, and as a guest, you just get on and talk, right? There's no camera, and then there's no camera, and then it was Phil and I with the actual show, and that's one way. And then 3.0 of the ITG, 2.0 of the show was the three of us, and we kind of became more of a radio show than like a podcast. And now we're going to this other version, and the actual show will be kind of Back to the Future with Phil and I, but certainly looking forward to that. Actually looking forward to listening to Jamie every day because that's kind of when he did JB and Goldwater. That's kind of my favorite show. I'd listen pretty often, and certainly he has great guests lined up and still behind the scenes programming, marketing, and stuff that I got to do or I have to do. That's great. I don't know how to describe this weekend. Disappointing a little bit if you're a Gamecock fan on a number of levels. And we'll start with some football recruiting because that's why folks listen to me. They don't really tune me in, I think, to get my in-depth analysis on women's basketball or even men's basketball. And so we'll start with football. So this happened again. And it's happened at receiver during this entire portal period where South Carolina is interested. And look, they haven't really been beating down the door for a whole lot of players. I mean, there's players certainly they would have taken had it worked out. Don't get me wrong, but I've said many times, you'll see Jeremiah Smith play tonight if you watch the game with Ohio. And that's another thing, national championship tonight in college football. Feels weird to have that this late right now, but it's just one more thing we got to adjust to, right? In this sport where they don't really give a flip, just watch, give us your money, right? As far as fans go. And I like the playoff. I think I've never been a person that thought it made no sense to have a college football playoff, but it is a little weird, the season lasting this long. And I think, too, because there's not a team from the South in there that we're all just kind of like, oh, well, we don't really, we're not really fired up about either team. Of course, at my house, we have to watch Notre Dame. It's just how it is, right? I got some brats. I'm going to start rocking about 3-4 o'clock. Start cooking them real slow for the game so we can celebrate. Watch it on the big screen. There's so much going on today and my wife's got such a honeydew list. She's off today that she's probably, hopefully, not a nervous wreck about all this. But we know who I'll be cheering for. And I don't even think I'll put money. I got a little app because sports gambling is legal here that I I'll throw. My rule is don't throw more than 10 a game on it. If you want to have some real fun and make the stakes a little higher, use money that you've won. But and I'm not all that great at it. Sometimes, just like with anybody, I'll get lucky. But actually, during the college football playoff, I don't think I've missed any game, like as far as point spread goes. I did. I missed Tennessee, Ohio State. I thought that would be closer, but that's it. So, as much as I've griped about the playoff, I think I've been pretty good at picking it, which I don't know. Maybe it tells you something. Who knows? But anyway, that's going on tonight. But there's so much going on tonight, and it's just one more thing to get used to. But back to the receiver thing with Harrison Wallace Jr. And I made a point and got off track like I normally do. There's no Jeremiah Smith or, gosh, name your Ohio State receiver. Jaden Greathouse for Notre Dame is pretty good. Even the Faison kid that played lacrosse in South Florida and plays lacrosse for Notre Dame, that's really good. I just don't know that there's that type of player in the portal at receiver. Harrison Wallace was close. I mean, leading receiver for Penn State. And also South Carolina had some other physical criteria. They wanted a 6'3", 6'4" guy, or a guy like Wallace that was proven at the high level, or even the low level, but that was just a no-brainer that was going to get in there and be good. But what they're not going to do is overpay, and it's unique for wide receiver in general because you do have some guys out there that are program changers. I mentioned Smith. I mean, there's some good ones. But there's a lot of other guys within that vast ocean of receiver. Your KC Concepcion's, Dane Keys, this guy, the player, the big guy that went from Texas A&M to Georgia, which that would have been if you want to know the physical prototype that they would have wanted, it would have been him. Um, but right now, with people shooting up the ask or I guess the NIL demands, and we're kind of in that world right now, although that's kind of with the Title IX thing and everything else, who knows what's going to happen in that space. I need to have some reflection time and really sit down and kind of wrap my brain around the what ifs with that stuff. I've been kind of so just stunned and I guess appalled at the Title IX guidance that was issued on the way out the door by the former Department of Ed folks. I mean, I don't know if the person that wrote the guidance is still there, but as I was reminded by some reports, it is just guidance. It's not even a regulation. It's certainly not a law. It's just like you may, if you don't do opportunity, there's some mental gymnastics that have taken place within that. And there are there's some attorneys, especially ones that are Title IX specialists, so to speak, that are bound and determined to take this to court. Don't know. I don't know. I'd have to kind of look at it. But, with kind of today's uh, deal with the portal, it's been the most out of control. I call it the stupid portal period because people are paying stupid money. And what's happening, according to published reports, is that collectives are thinking that they've got kind of some free money because rev share is supposed to come online in July. And so they're front loading all these deals, paying everybody through the nose in advance. Which means, and look, you can't make with NIL. And I know Wisconsin is trying to pull some stuff, and that's not going to hold up what they're doing. I'm actually surprised the great and virtuous Big Ten, who, you know, I'm surprised they jumped onto Wisconsin's side because legally that situation you can't. It's really any kind of NIL or before July 1st is if money's changed hands, it's based on it's based on technically an outside agreement. NIL is not, you can't require them to play. There's a loophole that makes it essentially pay for play, but and fundamentally, if you look at tax forms and things like that, you're paying those players for their name, image, and likeness, and paying them to provide asks. In other words, social media stuff, appearances, signed items, a lot. Boom, 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 boom. Go to this booster's birthday party, right? That kind of thing. And that's all fair because you're paying for their time. I don't know that the money is market value, but I mean, it's all fair. So I don't know what Wisconsin's doing with trying to keep this kid who's from South Florida, who's just going home, or from Florida somewhere, to Miami, as unpleasant as it may be to lose a guy like that. Perhaps, you should think that if I recruit this guy from down there and he probably doesn't have, or the situation, there's one thing, he may go home. I think some coaches and collectives and people like that need to use some common sense with that too. We are still dealing with college kids, and college kids, go look it up. That's why I have questions about what Alabama put together in recruiting with 7 kids from California. 3 or 4 of them are going to go home or back toward home at some point. It's just the further away from your campus you recruit, and it's always been this way, the less chance they'll stick or pan out or whatever you want to say. It's just how it goes. Geography in this sport still matters. It matters when you're sitting there with a lot of money. Maybe it matters a little less. Maybe you're a little more comfortable being that far from home if you can fly first class back anytime you want or get on a private jet. But it's just one of those things. And so I think that you look at all this stuff that's happening, and I think South Carolina played it right. There's a portion of the fan base that wants the Gamecocks to go out there and, spend, and that believes that there's an opportunity only that exists with Lenora Sellers at quarterback to win a championship or whatever. And look, Lenora Sellers is a great player, probably elite. I'm not going to sit there and tell anybody he's not that good. He's not as good as you think. No, I'm a big believer in Lenora Sellers. And a big believer, he is a guy that when you talk about individual impact can lead you to championships. And so you do want to surround him with good players, but I think different people have different interpretations of that. In this situation, until they start missing on guys and you're like, yeah, this guy really struggled to get to this level, or he wasn't as good, and blah, blah, or as they thought, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying as good as last year. You're never in college football, you're never going to get to the point where you're starting juniors and seniors, and, you're never, that's almost too risk adverse when you're just replacing guys in the portal, and you're not going to be able to recruit high schools. And look, guys, 75% of those starters on defense were what they call homegrown. They weren't transfer portal players. Yes, Kyle Kennard helped and D Knight helped, but Dylan Stewart's a high school recruit. All those D tackles, Carolina lost high school recruits. Debo Williams is a portal guy, but he never played at all at Delaware. And so really, technically, he is a recruit. The whole secondary. This whole secondary is mostly South Carolina kids. So I don't know that, that even here, that knocking it out of the park in the portal was the main reason that South Carolina was good on defense. So, you recruit well from the high school ranks, not only with highly rated guys that are good, but with in-state guys that are better than you expect, which there are a ton of them. I don't have to go into that. So you're never just going to go with a portal and replace it. There's some people that want that, and they think, well, devil be damned, in year 5 under Shane Beamer, you either win the national championship now and you better just go buy a team. And I mean, that's kind of like, it reminds me of the movie Blue Chips a little bit. And those teams don't win, folks. There were like, and what I mean by that is, yes, having a good portal class can increase your fortunes and up your win total by some games, but you've got to have a mix and chemistry and all that. And You go pay a guy that's not as potentially not as good as some of the guys you got on campus, and everybody knows how much they're because the kids will talk. Everybody knows how much they're making compared to the guys you got. And then the other issue at South Carolina, it's not an issue, but the other thing you got to keep in mind, there are six really good high school receivers coming in. All of them are good. All of them are guys that can step in and play, And so I don't think it's wrong to say, all right, this is what we're going to do for a receiver. We don't want just anybody. We want a warm body in here. If we don't get that, if we don't get what we want, and that's the way it is in free agency too, and in pro sports, not everybody's going after everybody. Like I said, it's not like high school recruiting. Then we'll just move on, and they'll go through spring, see how the freshmen are, see how the four primary returning players are, see what the passing game looks like, and then just like they got Delvine Campbell and Vitrevius Jacobs last offseason, they can go get one guy this offseason. But that's what happened. I probably talked all that way without telling you what exactly happened with Harrison Wallace. His ask was too high, and he committed to Ole Miss yesterday. Ole Miss was willing to go where South Carolina wasn't for him. Good luck. I mean, if this were Donovan Murph going to Ole Miss, I'd be a little disappointed. And me myself, I'd be like, well, that's just a loss, no matter how you look at it. I don't necessarily think that this is something that people need to get up in arms and complain about, because that's exactly what happened on the Big Spur with a fraction of folks once this news came out yesterday. So that's back to plan A or plan B or whatever. Gonna get the receivers through spring, see what happens. There's a second window B. And if they want a guy and they find a guy and they have an opportunity, they'll do it. If not, you got Nick Harbor, Jared Brown, Adrevius Jacobs, Mazeo Bennett's older. I don't know. I tend to think they'll be fine. I thought they were fine this year. Was it the most ideal? No. Was it, but was it top to bottom a better room than 2023? Yes. There was no Xavier Legette, but the rest of them, I mean, I just, come on. I think it was a deeper group, and it served its purpose. And the other thing about the 2024 receiver room is you had guys in and out of the lineup all year with injuries. South Carolina escaped the whole injury cloud that was hanging over the program, and really for about 10 years. But receiver wasn't that way, and it wasn't that anybody was out for the year. You just had guys missing long stretches. It's hard to get in rhythm with a quarterback that way, especially a young one in games. Jared Brown is an example. In and out of the lineup. When he gets back, he's good for 3-4 catches a game. He's got work to do. Don't get me wrong. They all do. The freshmen, the returning guys, Nick Harbor, everybody's got work to do, but that's really every player on the roster. So Harrison Wallace, Penn State wide receiver, goes to Ole Miss. I know some of you are disappointed. Hey, what you want my take? I'm not brushing it off and saying, no. I mean, the guy could go to Ole Miss and catch 70 passes, and we're all like, I should have paid. That's hindsight. That's sports. That's life. Hindsight's pretty easy to dissect, right? I think that the way South Carolina's doing it now is perfect. It's led to wins. It's led to a good culture. It's led to retention of players. It's led to winning. It's leading to responding and rebounding from bad games, which is really what it's all about, because everybody's going to have a bad game. In adversity in a football season, it's how you respond. Ain't nothing gonna hit harder than life. I didn't do a good Stallone there. I got to get my impressions rocking and rolling for the new show. I'll have more opportunities to do that because I'll be talking more. Anyway, so that leads us to our next segment, to player profile. Like we do, we're going to go through all the second-year guys here, and then some between now and the start of spring practice. I'm also writing a series on thebigspur.com for members that I'm kind of starting at the other. I've got a list and I'm kind of snaking it back and forth. So doing different guys on different days. I'm not sure with everything I have to do here that I'll get to put the finishing touches on my next Big Spur article on the second year guys, the winter outlook. But hey guy. Anyway, today's player is a player that I really have been high on for a while. Really in limited action this year. Loved what he did. Love his size. Love his tackling ability, instincts. And it's in a position that everybody's kind of concerned about. And that's Fred Johnson. Fred J.R. Johnson from Norfolk, Virginia. Came out of high school as an Army All-American. I guess it's now the Navy All-American Bowl. The game in San Antonio. 6'4", 230 pounder. I need to get an updated height and weight. It'll be up on your graphic screen. But I think it's 6'4", 230. Played in games this year. I came behind Debo Williams. Debo didn't really come off the field a lot, so Fred didn't play all the time. He's number 15, if you were just kind of watching and wondering. You know, he was a player that South Carolina kind of found at camp. He came to camp. Who's this guy? And he ran 4.5 and looked really good. Another guy like that, Nicky Manwari. You want to go back to the old staff? A guy like that who did not end up at Carolina was Devontae Wyatt. Carolina had him in camp. They got him committed. Georgia found out about him, flipped him, and he started for the national championship teams at UGA. So not all camp evaluations work out. Some camp evaluations do. Most camp evaluations where the guy's just a freak absolutely work out. Because camp, yeah, great athlete. Can he play football? That's the next question. And there's a balance you have to find with that in the SEC. And so if you can get a guy that's a great athlete, that's got size, that can't play football, you're rocking and rolling. So Fred gets the offer. Carolina gets him in. Virginia Tech did through everything they could at the guy to get him to stay home and go to be a Hokie. Other schools piled on. It wasn't like Nick where, nobody else really got in there and got after him. Nicky Manwari in the recruiting cycle. That was after COVID. Everybody's just kind of catching up. Fred did. He had a lot of guys. A lot of guys. Guy? What? I gotta quit saying that word, guy. A lot of teams after him. Ends up with South Carolina, gets playing time this year. Happy, good, and probably going to be a starter. And what he brings to the table is that size like Clayton White likes, is athleticism, and he's very natural at the spot. And, when you lose a Debo Williams, Demetrius Knight, I have not heard anything on Bam Martin Scott, so I'm just going to assume he is gone until he isn't. It's getting kind of, the NCAA. Do you think they're going to take time to review that? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? But, so you lose those kind of, Knight was there for 1 year, but Debo's been around for a while. So some of those veterans, who's going to replace him? Well, this is why you recruit. Is the guys like Fred Johnson, because you just replace him with Fred Johnson. And I think that he is a young player from the 2024 class that was highly touted, that actually is good, not just a ranking, that's good now, and not just a guy that down the road he'll be good. I think that's best case scenario. It's people ask me all the time, and it was never Fred Johnson when you're talking about restocking the linebacker room. It's who else is going to play? Because is he never going to come off the field? Or are you going to play a 4-1, whatever? What are you going to do? But he's really good. I think Fred by 2026 could be downright, one of the better linebackers around. I think in 2025 he's going to be pretty good. You wait till you see him play down to down. I just look at him with linebacker all the time. It's about dissecting plays, instincts, assignments, because linebackers are laterally oriented. You have gap, you don't want to get bounced out of your gap. You want to fill, make tackles, that kind of thing. And what gets you in trouble is when you take what's called false steps. And a false step is play is going to my right. I lunge to my left and then, and have to recover. Some players are good enough to do that because they're extremely fast. Most linebackers are not because the play is developing quickly. So you're not going to eliminate false steps. You want very few false steps. And that's not something Fred Johnson does, is take false steps. And he's huge and athletic and tough. I mean, there's just a lot to like about this guy. I remember, gosh, back in 06, everybody was kind of concerned about the defense because I think Ricardo Hurley had moved on. I think Dustin Lindsay got hurt. And a guy named Jasper Brinkley was a middle linebacker out of JUCO. And, people thought, oh, this guy from JUCO is going to be okay, Jasper Brinkley. And look at he ended up just being a beast. One of the best linebackers to ever play at Carolina. Lasted a while in the NFL. Good dude, too, Jasper Brinkley. And he was a big linebacker like Fred. I just, I don't know. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Jasper because I would never do that. And put those types of expectations with one of the better players in recent program history on a player, but he's got that type of skill set, and he's probably a little bit faster than Jasper and bigger, taller, more length. Oh, anyway, Fred Johnson, can't wait. You guys are going to enjoy, in my opinion, watching him play as a first-year starter next year. Is he going to light the world on fire from day one against Virginia Tech? Who knows? I mean, you want your linebackers to make tackles. Obviously, he'll need to make some tackles. I anticipate there'll be some mistakes as a first-time starter, as there always is. He won't be a freshman. Second year in the program, the expectations go up. You need to know what you're doing. And I think that's important as he transitions into a starter this offseason. John Whittle and Hale and Alex from thebigspur.com ask the other players about Fred, some of the outgoing ones, and they kind of said about him, sort of like some of the offensive guys said about Lenora Sellers. You'll ask players about their teammates. They're never going to say anything bad. Oh, he sucks. No, not going to say that. But what you want to look for is, are they going out of their way? What's their facial expression? Do their eyes light up? And this offseason, they did with Sellers and Rocket at times, and they did with Fred. So the words were like, look out. This guy, he's a beast. So I'm excited about Fred Johnson, as you can tell. Because whenever I mention, the core, because South Carolina loses so many players on defense, but you do have a great, really good core to build around. And that's Jelon Kilgore, obviously. EQ Smith, obviously. It's Dylan Stewart, very obviously. You could Judge Collier and Vicari Swain in the secondary, obviously. And I mentioned Fred Johnson because that's a guy to build around. And Fred is going to be a starting linebacker. And then what also is kind of exciting about it, in my opinion, Justin Okoronkwo, getting him another big freak athlete type at backer. And then you got Murphy coming from Florida State, who probably does not have the athletic upside as the other two, but he's still a big backer, still kind of a tackling machine. Only played in a few games at Florida State, had 15 tackles, and then came from Alabama originally, was one of the best linebackers in the country out of high school. That doesn't mean anything, but he can get in there and battle it out. Jerron Willis is still there. And then Donovan Darden, smacked me in the face with a tuna. I was sitting there complaining about the fact I thought he was an end all the way, and his film at end was great. He plays linebacker in the Shrine Bowl and looks outstanding. So what do I know? Don't listen to me. But anyway, Clayton White's usually pretty good about these linebacker evals and where to play everybody and stuff like that. Donovan Darden, if you don't know, is an incoming true freshman. Okay, wrapping it up here. Basketball, very disappointing loss at Oklahoma, kind of just wilted at the end. I don't know. I'm sitting there watching it. They have a lead and they get the ball, and then there's a turnover, and then there's a missed shot and a rush three, and it just, I don't know. It's going to be a long year, folks, in men's basketball. I'll just, I don't want to be. There's always a chance for a turnaround in sports, especially when a team's playing as sloppy as they are, because if you fix the sloppiness, what happens? I understand the backcourt is probably not SEC level. Um, I hear this a lot. There's a lot of football talk being applied to basketball, SEC level, and all this stuff. It's not good enough in the SEC this year from a talent standpoint to win big. Um, I do wish that they would have gotten those games with Auburn and Vandy because they'd still be sitting at 2-3. Probably not the strongest team in the league, or probably one of the bottom teams in the league, from a strength standpoint still, but he still wins this year, and you could piece together a get through year. But it's probably more likely it's bottoming out. You got Florida coming in this week, and then Mississippi State. So two home games, never a bad time to turn it around at home. There have been upsets this year in the league, but Carolina was close with Auburn, but I don't know. It's there's a lot. It's not just one thing. It's not just, oh, he failed in the transfer portal. Yeah. I mean, the idea coming in, and we'll get into this more during the show because I'm running out of time on coffee. Uh, yeah, I don't think anybody saw Cam Scott not being ready to come in and give them not just quality minutes, but be a starter right away. I don't know what's going on there as far as why, right? I don't know that anybody saw Thomas, the point guard that's injured, not being able to be a fit or kind of doing what he did when he was on the court, which made the offense or made the attack, the style of play, one that was never going to win because when you're not going to out athlete very many teams in this league, and you didn't last year. And look, quite frankly, Tennessee wins all the time in this league and doesn't all the time out athlete people. There's a difference between athletes and good basketball, right, in this sport. Kentucky does not have the athletes it had last year. They are a great basketball team, even though they did lose to Alabama. It was a great game. That kind of thing. So, if you're South Carolina, you were kind of deficient there. You did improve inside with Pringle and Colin Murray Boyles being older. And so you kind of feel better about protecting the rim. That hurt Carolina in some losses last year, Oregon and Auburn particularly. But now, I mean, Thomas was kind of the third guard they looked at. You had a kid from Philly that opted to go to Villanova. It was one thing. So that's one. Zach Davis didn't get better as he worked on his shot. He's not the same player he was last year. Even when he attacks the rim, which was an issue last year, it's like, hey, don't shoot as much outside, attack the rim. And there are games where he is offensively, but defensively, I mean, he was great last season, not great this year. Don't know what the deal is. And his good defense sometimes leads to his offense. Zach, and I like Zach. I mean, I have no problem with him, but I think he would probably tell you that this season has not gone as well as he had. And they were counting on him taking the next step, right? And thinking he would. So there's two: Cam Scott, Zach Davis, not as good. Colin Murray Boyles is good and better, but he's one guy. Nick Pringle, I think maybe they were counting on him to make a baby step, getting the ball more. And Paris mentioned it. Kind of the same guy he was at Bama. People criticize taking Jordan Butler. I don't know, man. I was under the impression, he was a 7-foot stretch, and that's what he was. And other parts of his game would come, and he probably wasn't playing very much. Benjamin Bosman's Verdonk is now being, because when the bigs get in foul trouble and you don't have any depth, I mean, it's like uh, people complain about him. Look, man, don't. Every basketball team should have a guy like this. The problem is when you need a bucket and he's bricking free throws or he's getting an offensive rebound and he goes immediately low. You're never supposed to do that. Keep the ball high. I was taught that a long time ago. But he goes low and gets it stripped or bricks a layup or gets blocked. But he's a five. Go eat 5 fouls and let Colin Murray Boyle sit on the bench. That's the concept behind him. I don't have a problem with him being in. And then Fedoko didn't get in. I don't know how good he would have been. Fredoko, the foreign player they're missing. Nobody, you didn't. Morris Ugasuk was going to be better, and he is better, but now he's like the best player, your go-to guy. You can't get by with that. Jacoby Wright was supposed to play a lot of minutes and be instrumental in the team, but he wasn't supposed to be the guy at point guard because those guys just aren't like that. And then, Miles Stute, with the exception of the Clemson game before he got hurt, was in the slump. Miles Stute. So I don't necessarily know that they sat there and went, let's just take a flyer on this guy. He'll be fine. and there's just a lot that happened. And it's hindsight, and I get it. So I don't know what needs to happen. Blow it up, start over with the roster next year, but it's not looking good there. The women, on the other hand, after Dawn Staley's contract, they come out and basically say, welcome to the SEC Oklahoma, 101-60, national TV at the Colonial Life Arena. That's that program. I always think when they do lose a game, and it's rare, that's actually a good thing. That just kind of, I don't know, it kind of reinforces who they are, and they get it back together. They're 18-1, undefeated in the SEC. I think it's their 52nd straight home winning, or 52 game home winning streak, 52nd straight at home. But you got Kim Mulkey and the fashion show coming in this week. College Game Day will be in Columbia, South Carolina for it. Number 2 versus number 5. So that's always exciting. I actually watch, and I'm watching more women's basketball these days. But LSU's 20-0. Now their games have been much closer. Vanderbilt by 6, Tennessee by 2 on the road, Auburn by 10 at home. But they're 20-0. Haven't played the schedule the Gamecocks have played. Boy, Kentucky women's basketball is 5-0 in the league. They kind of bottomed out last year. Looks like they're back. That's just an aside. But so that's this week. College Game Day in Columbia, South Carolina, 7 p.m. Kickoff on the big tip-off. Sorry, ladies. On ESPN. Coming up. As for the men's basketball team, it's the Florida Gators, and this game, man, I don't know. I guess I've been pretty impressed by Florida this season, just about all year. They can shoot. I like the way they play. I mentioned the 7'9" guy, and I was like, I don't think he's playing. And I was like, well, maybe he's played. And then Matt Anderson texted me and said, yeah, he's redshirting. They beat the snot out of Texas at home. This past weekend, they're 16-2 overall. Have lost 2 games in the SEC. So they come to town Tuesday night, 6 p.m. tip-off. Or is that Wednesday? It's Wednesday. I'm so sorry. Women's game's Thursday, 6 p.m. tip-off on the SEC Network. Our friend Mike Morgan, the Morgs, will be calling play-by-play. Sometimes Gamecocks get a little magic when the Morgs calls. But Florida's lost 2 games this year, 106-100, and a great ball game at Rupp. There's a lot of good ball games at Rupp this year. Again, Mark Pope. By the way, Arkansas is 0-5 in the league with all those NBA players. And then Missouri at home beat them 83-82. So we'll see what happens. All right, this has been Coffee. Don't forget, Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show coming up at 10:05. Shane Beamer will join JB and Mad Dog, and I think Morgan's on today. And then at noon, from noon to 2, myself and Phil Mullinex get in the Nana Sports chat box if you're a club chief member. We'll converse, we'll talk, we'll chop it up, and discuss the topics of the day. JC Shurburtt, this has been Coffee. Thanks to all of you that have started listening and watching. Numbers have been great, and we'll holla at you soon.